What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the greatest podcast in the world, Shooting the Shit Uncensored. And you know who this is? It's the truth, baby. The dad bod god, the bald, the beard, and the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight we got a special one for you guys. We got the one, the only Mitch Ryder in the house. But before we get into it, I need to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor of tonight's episode, and that sponsor is healthvape.com. Now listen, all you filthy fucking smokers and filthy vapors, cloud chuckers like I am, need to get on healthvape.com. It is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products are no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals. They help restore your energy while giving you the vital boost you need to get through your day. And they're vitamin infused. So go and check out healthvape.com. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase. Also, wherever you're tuning in, I appreciate it. Please, if you're tuning in on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, hit the bell to stay notified. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. It helps with our analytics and helps us bring more amazing conversations to more amazing people. Also, Shooting the Shit Uncensored. We drop 2 podcasts every single week, free for you guys on YouTube and all podcast platforms. So if you want to help support the podcast, you can help with super stickers, you can help with buying merch, all that shit, and it all goes towards making this podcast bigger and better, because you know this is Shooting the Shit Uncensored, where we spit the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and your feelings get left at the door. So let's get into it. Shooting the Shit Uncensored with Mitch Ryder, baby. Yeah. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored, the greatest podcast in the world. And my guest this evening is one of my favorite people in the entire world. And I know I say that about every guest, but this time I actually mean it. Mitch Ryder, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you.
Brother, thank you for having me. The dad bod god. It's the second time I've heard it now, and it's still popped me huge. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man, anytime, bro. Yeah, bro. It pops a lot of people, man. It's I don't know where I heard it. I stole it from somewhere. I'm going to be honest. I stole it from somewhere. I just don't remember where.
It's simple, but it's effective. I like it. Easy to say. 3 words, 3 syllables.
Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
That's
but
it,
man, I'm glad you could be here, bro. I feel like we've gone through a bit to get this podcast to happen, man. So I'm glad to have you here, man.
Mate, we have. I appreciate your patience coming back and forth with me. Like and then I get on tonight, and now I'm sick, and it's just like I had a strepsil just before, and then I realized I'm not going to be able to talk and suck on that all at the same time. So I quickly shoved it in the empty can as the intro was going. I was like, oh man, I'm a disaster, honestly.
Hey,
Shocking.
man, it's all good, bro. We make do here, man. But man, it's great to have you on, bro. I interviewed Todd a couple of months back, who is of course your manager, for top tier. Dude, you know what? I love the work that you guys have been doing, and Queensland wrestling. We were just talking about this before, man. Like, do you feel there's a bit of a disconnect between Queensland and the rest of the country when it comes to wrestling?
I think so. I think it's certainly getting better. I think with more people kind of traveling and linking up around the country. Like I know there's a ton of guys that have gone in particular from like central and sort of North Queensland, and then some of the guys that are in South Queensland, they've all been going over to the EPW camps that they've been running. And I know that I think every time a group of guys go over to that, I know that really, I think, opens up some eyes because so many people travel to go to those. So obviously it opens up eyes over there in Perth, but I think it opens up the eyes to the people that also go to travel from Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide. They go, "Oh wow, you're from Queensland and you're not terrible. How good?" and,
Yeah.
and sort of, it's nice, man. I think it's really starting to sort of come up, which is cool.
Yeah, man, I definitely think it is. I think we're starting to see a lot of talent now starting to get recognized. We saw the PWA, LFG tour, which
Yep,
showcased there. We saw the NWA there, and I think more and more wrestling and more eyes and more, Queensland talent are starting to be showcased on,
yeah.
bigger stages, which is good.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's also like you mentioned NWA and you mentioned like the PWA tour. I think it's also it's sort of, I think it's telling as well because World Series Wrestling are coming back as well in October,
Yeah.
and they haven't been to Brisbane since like 2017 or something like that. Like they've always done their tours every year. I mean, obviously COVID sort of maybe put a bit of a dint in that, but for the most part, they were running a couple of tours a year, and every year it was sort of Sydney, two shows Melbourne, maybe one show Adelaide, and maybe they'll go to Perth and whatever. And we just kind of kept getting left out, and I think that was for a numerous amount of reasons, but the fact that they've really made the investment to come around in their upcoming tour, I think really is a bit of a testament as well to the fact that maybe we are being taken a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's the testament to people putting in the work and people taking the effort to really sort of grow that scene. And I think that, Bobby Bishop does a lot of good work, in
100%.
Queensland, with I think the Three Count Academy.
Yep.
And even Todd,
Very
your
tough.
manager as well, Todd Eastman, he's doing a lot of work with a few different feds up there as well. So there's a lot of good
Yeah.
people up there, man, investing time and to really invest to grow it as well.
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of people here that I think have sort of considered what their future is in wrestling and where they might want to take it. And a lot of those people have decided that they want to sort of stick around and their future to be to help grow the next generation. Because I feel like there hasn't necessarily been a great deal of nurturing go on. Like any of the guys that sort of really have had success coming out of here. They've always had success here and then they've quickly gone and their success has taken them sort of to the next level somewhere else. And so I feel like we've kind of missed a little bit of, you know, maybe guidance, I guess you could say. Like I feel like we've kind of missed it a little bit because anyone who's had a great deal of success here has then been noticed and has, been fortunate enough to go somewhere else. So I think there's a lot of people that have had some experience here now that are kind of sticking around and utilizing their experience here, which is nice.
Oh, 100%. And I think as well, like, you don't necessarily have to be a performer that has gone to America or WWE or traveled to really understand the inner workings of the business. And I feel like, there's some people here in the country that really, really get it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I've been really fortunate to do a bit of travel like over the last 12 months, and it's it's really actually impressive. The further away that I go, the more I think I've realized just how good wrestlers in Australia are. Like it's yeah, like it's actually it really blew me away. Just how high level we all are. Because I guess like it's hard to tell, right? Like you don't know. Like we're the other thing you realize when you go away is how far away Australia is and how far removed from the other scenes and wrestling
Yeah.
promotions and stuff we are. And so like when you go to those and then you realize that it's we're really not that far away, if not as good or better as a lot of the other places.
What do you think it was that kept the rest of Australia away from Queensland so long?
Well, I don't think we've had a very good reputation. And I feel like I personally kind of broke into the business maybe when the tide started to shift a little bit, maybe right towards the end of kind of it being a little bit more carny, I guess you could say,
Mm.
for lack of a better term. And so I think it was very, let's use the word carny, right? Like I think it was very carny for a long time, and people would come up here, and then they'd go, oh, why would I spend time and effort going up there when I could just go and work more in my local scene or go
Sure,
somewhere else,
yeah.
and so yeah, so I think like I think kind of the reputation maybe has sort of kept people away for so long, and now people are starting to give it a bit of a chance again, and I think each time we're getting a chance, we're kind of exceeding maybe the expectations that we're given or that people expect of us.
Yeah. Because I heard like a promotion, I think it was a year or so ago, did an evening gown match, and that was an evening gown match, or it was like and like that was in Queensland.
The bra and panties match, I believe.
That's it. Sorry. And like, how did you, like, when you saw that, were you like, fuck, like this is gonna set us back years, or like, what was your overall take?
My action. So the thing that I sort of looked at it from, I mean, I guess first and foremost, the biggest question that was raised is, where did this idea come from? Did the idea come from the talent, or did the idea come from the promoter, right? And very quickly, because there was backlash on it, very quickly the talent involved came out and said, look, this was actually our idea for a storyline. Maybe we didn't really think it through very well. And so immediately that was like the thing that I kind of went to. I was like, well, look, if this is a talent thought up idea and not something being forced on someone, that's the most important thing. But then moving on from there, I do think it's a little bit like, or at the time I should say, I did think it was a little bit, like that's not really. I feel like wrestling's evolved quite a bit from those sorts of times, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure there would have been an audience for that. I didn't necessarily think it was going to set us back though. I just think it was an ill-timed move or ill-fated sort of move, and I don't think it actually went ahead either. I'm not really too sure.
Yeah, but also, like, if you're a promoter, and even if your talent come to do that, you need to have a business sense to go, no, we're not touching
that. Yeah, and to like complete transparency, I've actually never worked for this particular promotion, so the inner workings of how it all runs, who makes this, like all of that stuff, I actually have no idea how that works. But yes, I agree though. Like I feel like it's sort of one of those things where you're like, you can kind of see the writing on the wall with that. You're like, I feel like this is not going to be well received.
Oh, for sure. But like, I think, again, you don't know till you try. But I think as well, like sometimes you have to, understand the current climate.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, right? It's like the current climate, especially like 12 months ago from now too, when like speaking out and those things were really, really red hot. Yeah, like, read the room.
Yeah, man, like it's like how they thought it was gonna like go over well is beyond me. But for yourself, like, when did you actually decide to break into the business, and who broke you in?
Yeah, so I broke into the business in 2017. Actually, originally I actually first stepped into a wrestling ring in 2015. So I grew up in a regional town, sort of 2 hours from Brizzy, and there was obviously no wrestling out there. And so I found a wrestling school that was set up in like a TV studio here, like in the middle of Brisbane, basically, right close to the city. And I went there a couple times. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, this is good. I can't remember who the very first trainer was. I actually think the person taking training might have been Istria, like Punch Drunk Istria. I think. I could be wrong. But I believe he was the first person taking training. And like, it's funny looking back on that first session I went to, because I'm pretty sure Bobby was there. Like, I think Alex Shepard was there. Like, all these dudes that I've grown to know really well. And I went to a couple of sessions, but it was right at the same time as I just left high school. I was starting my first like job, my proper job, and so my work life kind of just got in the way. On top of the fact that it was like a 2 hours here, 2 hours there sort of drive every couple of days, and so so that was 2015, and then I sort of trained for a little bit. I loved it, and I knew it was something I needed, but I just sort of focused on work. So I was like, well, it's no good dedicating time to wrestling if I can't even afford to go to it. And so I sort of dedicated some time to work. And then 2017 rolled around, and I sort of got back in. I found a school that was a little bit closer to where I lived. It was in Ipswich, so it was about like an hour and a half drive from where I grew up. I went there. It was like classic one shed, like each side of each wall was like the side of the rope. Like you couldn't run the ropes this way because you'd hit the wall. Like it was like perfectly sized for this wrestling ring.
Yeah, perfect.
And yeah, rolled in, and then yeah, I kind of just, I don't know. It was just, I sort of started training there, and within maybe, I don't know, a month or so, I got thrown into a battle royal, and then it was just classic, right? Like classic
Yeah.
how I feel like how people would break in 5 or 6 years ago up here,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I ended up doing a battle royal or rumble or something, and then sort of kept getting booked, and just sort of learning as I went. Like it was very much, I would figure stuff out while I was going, basically. Like I learned how to do everything safely, and then the
Mm.
actual wrestling part of it, I'd sort of figured out in matches. And then, yeah, wrestled maybe for that year, like 2017. And then I started a business in 2018, and basically that just took up all my free time. And I just stopped wrestling again for like another 12 months, 18 months, while I started that.
It's funny that you said like that you learned the basics and then sort of learned as you were going, because like when you hear a lot of the old timers, that's how they learn. They learned like how to bump. That was pretty much it. Then put in a match
Yeah,
and learn
just
psychology,
figure
learn
it
the
out.
moves. Yeah, as they go, as you work with people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. Like I'd cringe to look at some of those first matches. Like it would just, and I hope that's how I feel in 5 years' time about my matches right now. Like, oh, I cringe to think about those matches. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I really do cringe to think about those matches I had 5 or 6 years ago. They probably are train wrecks.
Do you have a
I
plan?
will
Like,
not watch them.
do you have a long-term plan? Like, what do you want to go somewhere with wrestling? Take it overseas? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's changed. It's changed a lot over the course of my career, obviously, but it probably hasn't shifted as much as what it's shifted in the last couple of months, really, to be honest. Like it's my goal when the product that I grew up watching was WWE. That was like, I grew up middle of like the Ruthless Aggression era. That was like my prime watching days. Cena, Batista,
Nice.
Edge, Jeff Hardy, those guys. That was like, they were on top at the time. Taker.
Yeah.
And so for me, like wrestling has always been America. Like that's always been my dream, my goal is I want to go to the States. That's where I want to wrestle. Um, but I'll be the first to admit, like being away from home, being away from my family, I find that very difficult.
Mm.
And so I feel like I'm realistic enough to think, well, unless I was living there, I don't know if I could spend significant stints of time away. And America is too far to just go to and back and forth, right?
100%. Yeah.
And so so that was kind of my mindset. I thought, that's where I want to be. That's where the dream's always been. That's the goal. And then last year, I was fortunate enough to wrestle a guy by the name of Shota, and he's a Japanese wrestler. He wrestles for Gan Pro and DDT,
Yeah.
and I wrestled him last year in like a high school gym in Maryborough, which is like super
Easy.
regional town. Like
Yeah.
it's such a strange, like the way it all went about is just so funny. But so that's kind of how it rolled, and he really liked the match, and he enjoyed it, and he said, look, like if you're ever interested in coming to Japan, I'd love to sort of help you and bring you over. And I said, look, like in my head, I was like, everyone that goes to the
It's
States
the
sort of
dream, right?
seems to go, yeah,
Mm.
they sort of seem to go through Japan. Like, it's never really been on my radar too much, but whatever will help with the overall goal, let me try it. And yeah, it sort of took a long time. It like sort of took maybe 9 months, but
Mm.
eventually we figured out. He gave me some dates, and I went over and just fell in love with it. It was just like, it absolutely exceeded any expectation I had for it. It was awesome. Like and then thankfully I feel like I may have exceeded the expectations that people had for me there as well, because I ended up I ended up doing far more matches than I thought I would over there, and I got to network with some really important people over there, and yeah, everyone was really pleased. And from that, I realized, holy shit, like Japan's 7, 8 hours away from Brisbane. It's basically the same timeline. Like they're an hour behind us, so you're not really
Yeah.
talking different time zones or anything like that. Really, I was like, like this could realistically be an option that kind of works best of all worlds for me. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
it's kind of where it's shifted for me, to be completely honest. Like my style is probably a little bit more suited to that
Mhm.
style as well. Like it's a little bit more like, I guess, throws and strikes and sort of athleticism rather than character work. And so
Yeah.
it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. Like that's my whole kind of direction has shifted. And so as much as I'd love to wrestle in the States, I feel like my 5-year plan is kind of, let's keep going over there and seeing what happens.
Yeah, man. Like, how did you find the culture of Japan compared to Australia? Like, was it a massive culture shock?
It's my so Japan's my fourth um, Asian country that I've been to, and
Mm.
so I think of the Asian countries that I have gone to, I actually think it's probably the one that's the most westernized, and
Yeah.
so of course they obviously have their own rich culture, and you can certainly immerse
Mm.
yourself in that. But there are also a lot of, I don't know, like there are a lot of, especially like certain suburbs, there are a lot of touches of home. Like
Mm.
there's or not home, but like touches of sort of the western
Yeah,
side of
yeah,
things. Like Harajuku is super trendy. It reminds me of Melbourne, to be honest. Like it's really trendy and just very full of thrift shops and coffee shops and tree lined streets, and it's just really beautiful. And like you just kind of just walk around and yeah, it's great. And then there's other parts that are, you're just in a completely different world. And I really like the mix of both.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
because yeah, like I mean, you could like I can go from Brisbane to Sydney, and it's a different world in some parts of
Mm.
places. And so like you don't have to travel far to see that different culture, but yeah, over there, I really liked it. The food was amazing. Like
I
the
would have.
language is difficult, but
Yeah, yeah. How do you
a lot
find
of
the
people
language?
speak
How do you
English
find
too. So
like communicating over there? Was it like heavily English speaking there, or?
not really. Nah, not as much as I kind of thought it would be. Especially in wrestling. Like I thought a lot more wrestlers would speak English than they did. But wrestling is a pretty universal language though, right? So it's sort of like it was, and it's what's the best way to put it? Like it's very, I don't know, like over there, the style is so sport based and flow based, and so it's kind of like if you have a general understanding of wrestling,
Mm.
you can kind of really feel things out. And so like in a lot of my matches over there, I only did tag matches, which was great, but in all of these matches we kind of, there was not really anything to kind of go over until like the hot tag and the comeback. Otherwise, like everything else was kind of just figure it out. Like it was,
Yeah.
and it was great. I really liked it. I actually had a lot more fun doing it like that.
I think going out there and figuring it out, probably challenge you a lot more as well because like for the most part with wrestling today, everything is very, very like not very scripted, but like you don't see many people that can just go out there and put a match on. And I can see the best of both worlds. Like I've spoken to veterans saying, "Oh,
Of
everyone
course.
should go out there and just call it in the ring." But well, you
Yeah.
know what? If you're going to have the safest, most entertaining match, planning everything out, then do that.
Yeah.
Like the fans aren't going to sit there and go, "Oh man, he didn't call everything in the ring." Like fans don't know.
Yeah, of
They
course.
don't know. They don't know.
No, I completely agree. Like you definitely, like I would definitely never do like you just go out cold, but it was enlightening for me because my memory's shot at the best of times. And so it's sort of like going out there and having, and the other thing that's obviously helpful too is when you're over there, you're working with, professionals. Like this is their
Yeah,
job. Like this is what they do every day. This is what pays their bills. And so everybody over there has their move set and they've got it dialed and they know exactly what to do. And so it's like if you go over and you have your move set and you've got your high spot and you've got your submission, you just slot it in and
yeah,
it works great. Like and so it just takes a lot of the thinking out of it. Well, not so much the thinking, it actually puts a lot more thinking into it, but
oh,
it
of
takes a lot of
course,
the
yeah,
remembering out of it, and it just puts you more in the moment. And honestly, I just had so much more fun. And I mean, like, it's fun too because I'm obviously the silly Gaijin and I don't speak the language, and I could pretend like I don't know what's going on. Well, I don't know what's going on, but like I could really play that up, and they love it. Like it was great. Like it was just so much fun.
Did any of the Japanese guys rib you at all? Like, do the Japanese rib? Do they do ribs?
Well, one, one of the guys, you just reminded me of a story. So they do. I don't think they really. They certainly rib each other a lot. Like there was a lot of times in the locker room where you're feeling like myself. I kind of felt very like just left to my own devices. Like I was really well looked after and
Yeah.
really treated well. But like I said, a lot of them don't really have great English, and I don't have great Japanese, so it's not their fault. Um, but yeah, it was good. They obviously have their own very unique banter with each other, and I'm kind of just like, oh, that sounded like it was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there was it was this one, my very first match actually. They really, the office really wanted me to hit my rope assisted pile driver finish.
Yeah.
They were like, we really want it, we like it, we've seen the videos, like we really want you to hit it. And I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. And and one of the guys that I worked with, he sort of volunteered to take it. And he's like, and I was like, oh, you sure? He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he comes back after, and he was talking to his tag team partner, and they started laughing, and I was like, oh, okay, as long as his head's all good, I'm happy. And then the tag team partner looks at me, he's like, oh, yes, he was happy to take your pile driver because he saw how big your dick was, and it would soften the blow. And I was like, I was like, what? And anyway, this is like my second day in Japan, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? And I just had no idea. I quickly got out of my tights, and I was just like, oh man, what is happening? Like, that is
That is
the
the
one of the
best.
strangest comments I've ever had, but I loved it. It will stay with me forever.
Mate, that's putting you
So yeah.
over huge, bro. But like, did he say? Was there any other comment after that, or was it just like they left it light that?
They kind of just like he said that, and then I thought the other guy would like the guy who actually made the comment. I thought he would have been like super embarrassed or whatever, and he was like, "Huh, yeah," and I was like, "Okay, cool."
That's some fucking.
Yeah,
But
man.
I feel
So,
only in wrestling locker rooms could that you get away with saying that.
oh yeah, you could never say. You imagine you go to like your office job, and you just, yeah. Look, I don't even know what context that would be in an office job, but like, yeah, it's just yeah, you could never say that to any other person in the world, and they would be like, "Oh yeah, cool."
Yeah,
Yeah,
you say
no,
that in an
it's
office job, you're going to see Helen in HR. Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, exactly,
Like,
exactly. You're getting your future endeavors chat.
oh,
Yeah.
bro, like that's fucking crazy. That's fucking like after that, like how long were you in Japan for?
So I was only actually there for I was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and then
Yeah,
I ended up being there for 2.5 weeks. But because I was the day that I was supposed to leave from that very first match where old mate was happy to take the pile driver. Um, from that show, and this is the thing, and this is one of those examples of like when you're in somewhere like that, you realize that we are quite separated from the rest of the world. So
yeah,
when I was at that particular show, it was my very first show there. It was um, just an indie show, and there was a guy there from All Japan, and he'd sort of seen the show, and he kind of runs his own shows on the side. And he came up to me afterwards, and he was like, "Oh, are you free on the like? I really liked your match. Are you free on the 31st? We're running like a best of the independent juniors festival. I'd love you to be in it." And I was like, "Sweet." And it's
awesome.
just like it literally just happens like that. And then and so yeah, so because of that, I sort of changed my flights to a couple of days later, and ended up doing that show. But it was just like one of those things where like it was really apparent that like you really don't know who's going to be watching when you're over in a place like that, or
Yeah, for sure.
somewhere else where there's significant there's a significant amount of wrestling, but there's significant eyes on the product as well, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Um,
But yeah,
like, what did you, well, like when you came back, like from Japan, yeah, what were some of the things that you were able to come back and implement in your game here that you learned while you were over there?
I think the biggest thing for me, which was obvious for me personally, was just it really helped me from a confidence perspective, to be honest. I
Mm.
think there's times where over here you'll have a match and you'll be like, oh man, I thought that would be better than what it was, or however it goes. And I feel like for me personally, like I really take, like, everyone's their own worst critic, right? But like I feel like I really beat myself up if I don't perform how I want to. And I think being able to go over there and perform with the people that I got to perform with, and sort of hang with them, and do a good job, and be asked to come back, and things like that. Like, I think if anything, it really just helped me with my confidence. Like, so when my first few matches back here, I've just been very, not, I don't want to say carefree, but I've just been able to be a lot more in the moment, and just remind myself, what, like, I've got this. Like, I do know what I'm doing at times, and I'm not just still trying to figure it out. Like, of course I'm still trying to figure it out, but
Yeah.
I think it was easy for me to be like, oh, do I even know what I'm doing at some points? And so it was, yeah, I think it's really just helped me to sort of be a lot more calm and go, yeah, all right, cool, I know this, and I know my stuff, and I know what I need to do to get this crowd involved, and whatnot.
Yeah. And, how did you, like, getting back to sort of the more local scene, how did Top Tier come to be from your perspective?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we oh man, so we've been a group now for since like March last year, I think.
Mm.
March last year? Yeah, I think March 2022. And so we got together. It was originally, it was myself, and so Todd and myself had been working together for a long time, well, for a couple of years at least. And then when I went to the NZ Dojo, Fale Dojo in 2021.
Yeah.
During COVID, I went over there and then got stuck and lockdown and all sorts of hotel quarantine and fucking all sorts of shit happened. Um,
Jesus.
but yeah, yeah, it was rough. And so went over in the travel bubble. Like, that whole experience was wild. So I went over there in the travel bubble with Sebastian Matters and Tim Hayden from Queensland. Well, the three of us all went over,
Mm.
and those two dudes got over. I think they got over like 2 days before me, and then I came over, and we all left. They had like a Queensland and like Auckland travel bubble that you could sort of go between the two during lockdown, but you couldn't really go anywhere else. It was real strange, but it was just perfect timing for us because we were like, cool, we'll go over and we'll get involved in this. At the time, they the whole intake they filmed for a documentary for New Japan World, and so they did like a 12 episode documentary series of our time there, which was really cool. And so, obviously a really good opportunity. Get over there, and we'd been there for like a month, and we'd just
Mm.
done our first exhibition, and then I think New Zealand, like Auckland, got one or two cases and just completely just shut down, just
Yeah.
completely just collapsed and went straight into level 4 lockdown. And all of a sudden, we were just stuck there, and we were like, "What is
Oh,
happening?"
fuck.
We actually thought originally we thought we were going to be brought back home, and no, we just got stranded there. And so I actually got to come back before the other boys. I actually managed to. They released like a small amount of what was considered emergency flights, and we sat there like we were lining up for like Splendor in the Grass tickets, like in the waiting room, and just kept reloading. The first round we missed out, and then like 2 weeks later they did another round, and I was fortunate enough to get one. The other boys didn't get one, and so they ended up having to stay for like an extra 2 months. And I was there for, yeah, it was hectic. I was there for 4 months. Those dudes were there for 6 months, and then yeah, when I came back, I I flew to Melbourne, did like 15 days hotel quarantine, and then flew back to Brizzy. It was hectic.
That's
It was
wild, man.
wild. Yeah, it was wild. And I think while we were at the dojo, we were sort of sitting there and we're like, oh, like we really need to like, I think we need to kind of like, we're all going back. We need to kind of capitalize on the
Yeah.
fact that we've all gone and done this, bettered ourselves. you know, a faction's kind of a cool thing. A heel faction, there isn't really too many of those at the time up here. And so I think it was kind of born from that, if anything. And then yeah, those boys got back around Christmas time, and then I'm pretty sure our very first show was like February or March, and then that's where it started. We just came out. That I think the guys helped me win the Wide Bay Pro Interstate belt, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we were on. It was us, and then yeah, and then Seb ended up going over to the UK. Seb ended up going to the UK, and then when he left, we brought on Solomon, who
Mm.
it was just one of those things like where we like it just felt right, you know, like we were all really good friends outside of like we all would hang out, we would all
Yeah.
go drive to the shows together, we would all kind of be at the show, like you know, so why not just be a group?
And
It was
that
fun.
projects on camera as well when you got good chemistry with
Exactly.
people, you know what I mean? Like, it really does.
Exactly. And there's such a great story there, like especially with Tim and myself in particular.
Mhm.
I got to team with him last weekend. We had a tag team match, and it was so we had so much fun. But we also have so much history. Like I
Yeah.
literally slept on the floor with him, like this far apart from each other for like 4 months. You know what I
Whoa.
mean? We just we've got such a solid bond,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's cool. Like we've shared so much, and we've literally been to other countries together
Mm.
for the love of this, and so
You have
it's
that
really cool
connection.
because yeah, and like he doesn't have that with anyone else. I don't have it with anyone else. Like, and we've all kind of, and obviously it's just grown ever since we came back, and so yeah, it's really cool. It's
It's
very and
interesting.
it's very natural too.
Yeah, man. Like it's funny. Like I'm friends with you know, Angel, who was in ECW, was the Kingpin and
Yep.
part of the Baldies, and Tony DeVito, who was part of the Baldies. Like these guys have been friends for like 30 years,
Yeah.
and it's like you can like even their stuff was like when they went to do the Baldies thing, it was like everything just clicked, like it just all
Yep.
sort of worked. And he said that's when you
Yeah.
know is like when people are just put together randomly. Sometimes you can capture
Yeah.
lightning in a bottle, but he said he's like you
Yeah.
don't capture that.
Yeah, no, it. Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like Tim and I in particular, like him and I, I feel like we've got a lot of chemistry when it comes to all of the what's the word like the entertainment side of top tier, and
Yes.
it's honestly just really about getting our reps now as a team because we've been getting booked as a team, but we've only teamed 4 times ever. That's it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and 2 of those were for the NWA tag belts. And so it's like that was literally the second and third time we've ever tagged. And so it's sort of like it was funny because like I feel like as a collective we're like super tight and it's just we just really just need the reps now. Like we just got to get in and we we can do as many reps as we can in the gym, but like in the training gym. But like it's so different. And so I'm so glad that we got to work as a team last weekend because we had a ball and it went really, really well.
Talking about NWA, how was that experience?
It was for me, like it was I think I don't want to say better experience than the others, but I think for me personally, like I had a much different experience mainly because I got into wrestling and I got into the Smashing Pumpkins at the same time. So I
Nice.
was like a really, really big Smashing Pumpkins fan. So like I don't know, maybe in like oh shit, I don't know, maybe like 2007, 2008 was, when I was really getting into wrestling. And for Christmas one year, I got like Raw vs. SmackDown, let's say 2007.
Yeah.
And then for like PS2, and then also for PS2, I got Guitar Hero 3. And like the Smashing Pumpkins are like a
Yeah.
really big part of that game. And so like at the same time, I was like forging this love for both of them,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I've sort of kept being a fan of both of them for a long time, and so then to come like it was such a crazy full circle thing for me. Like I was just like, not only do I get to wrestle on this really cool platform and in front of more people than I've ever been able to wrestle for, but
Yeah.
then after it I get to get on the beers and see a band that I've wanted to see for my whole life basically, and then do that again the next day, and then do that again like 2 weeks later. And then, on the third show, like I was able to bring my partner along, and she's a huge fan of the Smashing Pumpkins, and like it was just really, really cool. And like being in that catering, like backstage environment, and like the NWA guys were fucking legends. Like some of them, I'm sure you saw some of their antics. Like some
Yeah.
of them are just, you know, full gimmick, like wild dudes. But yeah, it was really cool. And it was good to see like a lot of the feedback that I was given. The one thing that was really, really cool about it all, and it's something that really blew me away, was the fact that Billy watched every single match. Like he watched every match. Like Tim and I came out for our second tag match on day two,
Mm.
and I was like I was standing behind, like it was like a production truck, and it was sort of like that was like behind, or sorry, the ring was in front of this production truck, and sort of like the entrance was kind of there too, and I was kind of like looking behind, and I was just like, oh, like I could see just this sea of people, like thousands of people. And I was like, holy fuck, this is like the most amount of people I've
Huge.
ever wrestled in front of by far. And so I was thinking about that. And we came out and we came out and we sort of like, I went one way around the ring, Tim went the other way around the ring. And then we both kind of like jumped up on the apron. And we look like, as we we're both getting in the ring, we look, and Billy's standing like on the ring post, like watching. And I was just like, holy fuck, like that's pretty cool. And he watched day one, which was rad. But then yeah, he watched day two from like ringside. And he watched the third day that we did as well. And like I know he watched all the other guys too. And like that was really impressive to me. Like I was
Mm.
like he's the headliner of this whole thing. Like he's pretty much the reason why everyone's there from like a music perspective, like the
Yeah.
whole show
100%.
perspective. And he's kind of just like chilling, watching all these matches, and sort of giving feedback. And that was the cool thing, because all of his feedback really for us was about working TV, and we've never worked TV, so it's like
Mm.
it's you know, valuable feedback, because you know we're not really going to get it working, you know, our weekend shows here,
Yeah.
because we don't work TV.
How did you find his feedback? Like, was his valid? Did you find like he had good points that he made?
Yeah, I think so. I think he looked at it from like he gave a couple of examples, like so for example, like he liked our day one match, but he said to us, he's straight up, he's like, I don't think that would have been a good match for TV. And then he gave a few points as to why, and he sort of said, like, you know, there were times when instead of playing to, because there were cameras, they
Sure.
weren't the TV days, but there were cameras, and he was sort of saying like there were times where instead of, you know, playing to the crowd on the camera side, you would play to the crowd, but just on the other side. Whereas like if you're going to do that, like you may as well play to the crowd where the camera is. And so it's like, because you sort of like, obviously, like if you're watching a TV product where there's a hard camera, 99% of the time when they're playing to the crowd, it's always on that hard cam side, right? Like they're never playing to the crowd with kind of like the back to the camera, or at least not normally.
Mm.
And so like things like that. And then what was also really positive is the second day, when like, so we did the very first 2 days of the tour. And so the second day we had the exact same match, same time segment. We actually had a little bit more time, which was good. And he was like stoked. He was like, that match, like that was way better, this and this and this, and rah, rah. And so he was like, thought it was, you know, twice as good as the one we had, and he thought we'd really taken the advice on board, which was nice, because you know, we'd never really been given advice for TV as such. So it was cool to know that we'd picked it up and actually done what he'd said.
Yeah, man. It's you know, I feel like, you know, he has been around it. You know what I mean? He's been around Impact. He's been around NWA.
Exactly.
You know what? I feel like pre-pandemic, NWA was the hottest product on wrestling, on television.
NWA Power, the first few, like, yeah, the first
YouTube
few, maybe
series.
like year of NWA Power was pretty bloody good. I remember, and I got a lot of buzz too. Like, it really got a lot of buzz about it.
Yeah, because I had like more of like a studio setup, which was more of the
Yeah.
old school feel, but it was like it hadn't been seen in years.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, well, for people like myself, like I never watched studio wrestling, and so it was like for me, like I've obviously seen clips of it, but I
Mm.
was like, well, this is cool because it's actually in 2020, or in 2020, let's say, not from, you know, 1987, and so it's sort of like it was cool to actually see how that could be transformed for a modern day audience. Like it was nice.
Oh,
It's sort
100%.
of
Yeah,
dropped off since then, but yeah.
I think the pandemic really affected it. I think the pandemic really affected a lot of companies, you know, independent companies as well. But NWA,
Yeah.
I feel like that really halted their trajectory for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it's nice to see that they did come out. And because I think one thing that was really positive from them coming out here is, as much as it's great for them to get their name out and whatnot, I think it really did a lot for our scene too.
Yeah.
Because, although it was a music festival, like there's some of the shots from like the Newcastle show at the entertainment center, and like the shots from like Horden Pavilion and stuff, they're like the ones that the Sydney guys got to do, like, and even like the Melbourne ones, like, man, like they look like big arena shows.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, at the end of the day, obviously, like, it's a concert and people are there for the music for the most part, but like to be in front of that audience and then also to have footage and pictures in front of an audience like that, it's only going to, like, it only takes one person to see those photos and go, oh wow, that's wrestling in Australia and the NWA was there, holy shit,
Yeah.
maybe it's pretty good down there. And then all of a sudden things blow up. And so I think it did like a really, yeah, outside of the fact that I had a blast, I think it also really did a lot for the scene and for the guys down here, because so many, like, we got a unique perspective of the tour, I guess, from up here in Queensland, because we did the very first and second day, and then we did the very last day of the tour. And so not only did we see all the guys at the start and all the guys at the end, and see how beat up some of them were, but like
Yeah.
we also got to hear the stories from all of the other trips, and how much they put over Australia as a wrestling country, basically, which
Yeah.
was awesome. Like they yeah, they really put it over. Like the like La Rebellion, the tag champs. I sort of created a bit of a good relationship with Mecha Wolf, and yeah, he was like really putting over the teams across Australia, and just the talent that we have here. I think a lot of people were really surprised. The other thing that was really positive to sort of take away from the NWA, and then obviously like 2 weeks later is when I went to Japan, and so I sort of took it over there, but also used it while I was there and realized that that's what they're doing as well. The thing that we don't have to really do here in Australia, because we only work a couple times a month, is we can kind of go balls to the wall, go hard, because we've got like 10 days, we've got a week, we've got 2 weeks to rest in between all our matches. That NWA tour, those dudes did like 10 matches in 2 weeks.
That's
And then,
nuts.
yeah, and then in Japan, like a lot of those guys that I worked with are working like 4 or 5 times a week, even the ones that are independent. And
Yeah.
so it's
Wow.
like you've really got to figure out a way to either work safer or work way smarter. And
Mm.
that was something that I really took away from it, is that you need like get so much better with, you know, getting more for less, I guess, if that makes sense. Like you can't be going out and doing top rope runners every night, because it's just, if you want longevity in the business, it's just not going to happen that way.
Do you feel like
That was a
wrestling?
huge takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like wrestling fans demand a lot from wrestlers? From in ring, I mean.
I think so, yeah. I mean, like, and they should. I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to get to a point though where I mean, I don't know. Like, to take it in like a different direction. I came up before I was a wrestler. I came up in like the action sports world randomly.
Yeah.
So I was a BMX racer for like 10 years, and then that's what I was doing before I started wrestling, and I gave that away to start wrestling. And it's one of those, like, that's a sort of industry where you look at progression and you're like, there's no way that it can get bigger than this. Like, there's no way that someone can do 3 backflips. There's no way that someone can get their lap time down by 5 extra seconds. But then you move forward 5 years time and people are doing it. And it's like, how the fuck does that happen? And so I feel like wrestling's kind of the same, like maybe in the 80s and 90s, they looked at, you know, Dynamite Kid, and they were like, it can't get bigger than him doing a 450, or it can't get bigger than Jushin Thunder Liger doing a moonsault, right? Like it doesn't get more than that. And then you fast forward to now, and people are doing like Phoenix splashes, or they'll do like 630s, and it's just like how like I'm sitting here going, how does it get bigger than that? You know what I mean? Like how can you go harder than that? But I feel like because those things are becoming more common, the more common those things get, the more wrestling fans are going to expect. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like, but then in the same breath, like, does it completely shift and does it become a lot more simple and character based again? And then does it do like a full circle like that? Like, I don't know. I actually have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, like it's possible, but I feel like it depends. Like, there's good work, like there's workers out there that can go and wrestle and not put their bodies at risk and tell a great story as well. And I get like high flying point of wrestling and stuff like that. And I feel like for the Australian scene, I don't really feel like for the most part, there's a lot of unnecessary risk being taken. Like there is in some shows and some workers, but not necessarily a big chunk of that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think it's gotten to a point where like it appears, at least, like with each promotion kind of around the country, there's sensible people in charge for a lot of places. And so I feel like those sorts of unnecessary risks aren't gonna really happen too much, like uncalculated stuff. Like I don't think any booker's gonna, walk past and overhear someone calling something that would be incredibly risky and be like, "Yeah, oh, you won't do that," and fucking walk off. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's gonna happen anymore. And I think, risk is more calculated. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, too, like when and it's funny because I actually had this conversation with Jag while I was in Japan.
Yeah.
He and I were talking, and he sort of said, he's like, because I brought up the fact that I realized in the last couple of months about working smarter and not, taking more calculated risks, or sorry, taking less uncalculated, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and he was basically saying, he's like, yeah, like, you can't do it here because you've got to perform 4 or 5 nights a week. Whereas he's like, I was guilty of it back home when there would only be one show every 2 months, and you just want to put your all into everything because it's your one chance in the 60 days to really shine and get yourself over. And then they're just going to forget about you before the next time, and then you got to do it all over again. And he's like, so it's like, it's understandable why we do it here. But I think, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man, for the most part. But man, I'll tell you what, man, we've been going for almost an hour, man. This has been a great conversation, bro. I really enjoyed it. I tell you what, man, we need to do an episode with the entire top tier stable. I feel like that.
I would like that. That'd be really cool.
We'll make it happen, bro. We'll do that one.
We'll get a couple of brewskis, man. That'll be a good time. We'll end up. Tim and I have been known to drink, so that could end up in a good spot.
Hey, we'll do that one live, bro. We'll have a few drinks and we'll get it going, man. But man, where can everyone find you on social media? And man, is there any merch that people can get as well?
Yeah, so social media is the same for both Twitter and Instagram. I've only just started using Twitter. It's become incredibly apparent to me that it's actually really important outside of Australia. It's pretty much the only platform that people use. So on both, it is I am Mitch Ryder on Twitter and Instagram. No spaces, no dash. I can't think of what they're called.
Hyphens.
No underscores. Just I am Mitch Ryder. But yeah, that's on Twitter and Instagram. And then I also have a page called Wrestling for Rescues. And it's basically just a non-for-profit that sells a bit of merch, some cool merch. And all the proceeds go to different animal rescues around the country. And so you can find that too. That's cool.
That's awesome, man. Make sure you go and support Mitch Ryder. Go follow him on all social media. But this has been Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I appreciate you for coming on, Mitch. But guys, make sure you go and check out our sponsor, healthvape.com. Use that promo code MWAPod. But this is Shooting the Shit Uncensored, the greatest podcast in the world. And man, where we spit the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and everyone's feelings get left at the door. But until next time, we'll see you again very soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.